Welcome to another deep dive. This time, you've given us some amazing stuff on the Battle of Little Bighorn,
Yeah, some really cool stuff.
focusing on, well, one guy in particular.
That's right, Sergeant Charles Windolph.
And we're going to get right into the heart of this battle.
Absolutely, through the eyes of a soldier who was actually there.
Who lived to tell the tale.
Exactly. We're going to be looking closely at his memoir, I Fought with Custer.
But also, kind of,
Yeah, pulling in
some other stuff.
some other historical records to make sure we're separating fact from fiction and really get a sense of what it was like
To be there.
in the thick of it.
Yeah, and what it was really like.
Not just names and dates and,
The textbook version.
exactly. We're going to uncover the human stories.
Yeah, the decisions that had to be made on the fly.
The split-second decisions.
And mysteries.
Oh, yeah, those mysteries that still surround Little Bighorn.
And we're going to look at it all from Windolph's perspective.
Right, his unique perspective.
Okay, so let's set the stage here.
Right.
It's June 25, 1876, the Montana Territory.
Big Sky Country,
And this is where the Battle of Little Bighorn took place.
also known as Custer's Last Stand. A
Right.
huge victory for the Lakota,
Okay.
Northern Cheyenne, and Arapaho tribes.
I guess.
The U.S. Army's 7th Cavalry,
Commanded by.
George Armstrong Custer.
Ambitious.
Some might say reckless.
And this is where Sergeant Windolph comes in.
That's right. A soldier in Company H.
Of the 7th Cavalry.
Yep, right in the middle of it all.
And the really cool thing is he survived.
He did. He lived to tell the tale.
And he wrote a book about it.
Yeah.
Years later.
So we get this first-hand account.
From someone who was part of Captain Benteen's battalion.
Okay, so separate.
Or a separate group from Custer's main force.
So we're getting a different angle in this battle.
Exactly. A lot of people know about Custer's last stand, but
Right.
what about the soldiers who weren't with Custer?
Right. What were they doing?
What was their experience like?
Windolph's story sheds light on that.
For sure.
So Windolph starts his story the morning of June 25th. Okay.
7th Cavalry,
About 600 men strong.
making their way through the Montana Territory.
Tough terrain.
And he talks about how the regiment was split up.
Right into 4 detachments.
Custer leading 5 companies, Reno with 3,
Benteen with another 3.
and McDougal bringing up the rear.
With the supplies.
Imagine if you were Windolph,
Yeah.
suddenly separated from a big chunk of your force heading into unknown territory.
And this becomes a key factor.
This decision by Custer.
It really does in how the battle unfolds.
Windolph also mentions there was a lot of uncertainty
Oh, yeah.
among the troops about how many they were up against.
Right.
Some scouts estimated up to 5,000,
Which would have seriously outnumbered the 7th Cavalry.
while others thought it was much smaller.
Right. Conflicting intelligence.
Yeah, which is a recipe for disaster.
It really highlights the possibility that Custer and his men underestimated the Native American forces.
Right, and that's dangerous.
Underestimating your enemy can be very dangerous.
So Windolph focuses on Benteen's battalion, which was sent on a scouting mission.
Okay, south and west.
Can you picture it riding through this rough terrain for hours? No sign of the enemy.
Windolph calls it a wild goose chase.
He did.
He said it was a wild goose chase.
Which shows you how frustrated they were.
Yeah, they were riding blind, basically.
Not an easy ride either.
No,
He talks about how tiring it was,
both for the men and their horses.
which becomes important later on.
It does these little details.
What do they matter?
They really give you a sense of the conditions
Yeah, what it was really like.
for these soldiers.
So after hours of this, Benteen's battalion turns back,
Okay.
trying to rejoin the trail taken by Custer and Reno.
Right.
And that's when things start to heat up.
Why? What happens?
Well, imagine you're Windolph. You've been scouting for hours, no contact.
Right.
And suddenly, gunfire in the distance.
Well, that changes everything.
Everything changes.
Now they're racing toward the sound of battle.
Knowing things have gone very wrong.
No.
It's like everything changes in an instant, right?
Absolutely.
From scouting to
Full-on battle.
we gotta go now.
Exactly. And to make matters even worse, they soon run into Sergeant Canape
Oh, yeah.
from Custer's company riding towards them.
Uh-oh.
He's carrying urgent orders from Custer for McDougal to bring up the pack mules and ammunition as fast as possible.
So they need the supplies.
They need everything.
Like right now,
Yeah.
Windolph says Canepe was shouting that they've got the Native Americans on the run.
Really.
Which
Which maybe wasn't totally accurate.
It maybe gave them a false sense of hope for a minute.
Right. A little bit of false hope.
But that hope is shattered when they run into another rider,
Who's that?
Trumpeter Martini,
Oh, boy.
who was serving as Custer's orderly that day.
Okay.
This encounter is one of those moments that everything hinges on.
Okay.
Martini's carrying a handwritten message from Custer to Benteen,
What does it say?
pleading for him to come quick, big village, be quick, bring packs.
Ooh,
You can just imagine, like,
the
the
desperation.
weight of that message.
Yeah, you can practically hear the desperation in Custer's words.
And we actually have Martini's own account from years later, which adds another layer to this whole thing.
Really? What does he say?
He described Custer's demeanor, the information from the scouts about the village's size, and even Custer's attempts to rally his troops.
Wow. So we're getting
Look, a close-up
a close-up view
of that moment.
of this chaotic moment.
And how urgent everything was.
Wow.
Martini's horse was even wounded,
Oh, wow.
but he was so focused on delivering that message, he didn't even seem to notice.
Amazing.
But here's where things get a little confusing.
Okay.
Benteen doesn't immediately send word back to McDougal, who was trailing behind with the pack train.
So the supplies aren't coming.
Well, some historians think he assumed Canipe had already done that.
Okay. So a miscommunication.
Maybe, but we
Mm.
don't know for sure.
Right.
What we do know is the different pieces of the 7th Cavalry are coming together for this massive fight. And the stakes are getting higher and higher. Now we got to kind of take a step back
Okay.
and look at what's happening in other parts of the battlefield.
Yeah.
While Benteen's battalion is rushing towards the sound of gunfire,
Right.
Reno's battalion have already engaged the Native American forces, and it is not going well.
Yeah.
They are fighting for their lives.
Wow.
Windolph wasn't there himself,
Right.
but he put together what happened from talking to other survivors.
Oh, so he pieced it together.
Yeah. Reno's 3 companies charged towards the Little Bighorn River, aiming to attack the village like Custer had ordered.
Right.
But as they got closer, they realized we were seriously outnumbered.
Yikes.
Windolph talks about the valley just teeming with Native American warriors.
That must have been a terrifying sight.
It must have been.
Yeah.
Reno realizes his mistake pretty quickly
Okay.
and orders his men to dismount and fight on foot,
Okay.
taking cover in a grove of trees along the riverbank.
Okay.
Windolph talks about how intense the fighting was
I bet.
and how the Native American warriors used their superior numbers and knowledge of the terrain
To their advantage.
to their advantage.
Right.
And here's an interesting thing Windolph points out.
What's that?
He challenges the common belief that all the Native American warriors had repeating rifles.
Oh, really?
He thinks a lot of them were actually using traditional weapons,
Like bows and arrows.
bows and arrows,
Interesting.
while others had a mix of older firearms.
Okay.
So it wasn't this one-sided technological advantage that a lot of people assume.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And he also points out a critical disadvantage for the 7th Cavalry.
What's that?
Their Springfield carbines, while they were powerful, they were prone to jamming,
Really?
especially in the heat of battle when they were firing them quickly.
Oh, that's bad.
Imagine that
Yeah.
you're in this desperate fight.
And your gun jams?
I click nothing.
Oh, man, that's got to be terrifying.
So as things get worse, Reno makes a decision.
Retreat.
Back across the river to higher ground.
Oh,
But it's a chaotic and bloody retreat.
oh no.
Soldiers trying to mount their horses, trying to outrun the warriors.
This chaos.
Windolph describes it as pure panic and confusion.
Wow.
A lot of men were lost during that retreat,
Oh, no.
including officers and scouts who had been guiding them.
Devastating.
It was a huge blow to Reno's battalion.
Yeah.
Now back to Benteen.
Okay.
His battalion finally crests a ridge overlooking the valley,
Okay.
and they see intense fighting.
Uh-oh.
Reno's troops desperately trying to hold off this attack. From a hilltop across the river,
Right.
the valley is filled with warriors,
Oh, wow.
and the reality hits them.
Mm.
Custer and his 5 companies are somewhere in that mess.
Oh, boy.
And that's where the mystery of Custer's last stand really begins.
Right.
Because Windolph, being with Benteen's battalion, he couldn't give a firsthand account of Custer's final moments. But he does share some key insights based on what was known and what people were saying at the time.
Okay, what's that?
He emphasizes Custer's earlier decision to split his forces,
Right.
a move that divided the 7th Cavalry,
Which maybe?
which maybe played a role in their defeat.
Possibly.
He also acknowledges that Custer likely underestimated the size and strength of the Native American forces.
Right, probably because of those conflicting reports from the scouts.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
then, of course, there's the jammed carbines,
Right.
which could have been a deciding factor in their ability to fight back against this huge force.
Makes sense.
Windolph doesn't pretend to have all the answers, though.
Okay.
He knows there are conflicting theories and interpretations that have come up over the years about Custer's last stand.
Right.
And remember, his memoir was published decades after the battle.
Right.
And during that time, a lot of accounts and studies and debates shaped how people thought about the battle.
So the historical narrative was changing.
Exactly.
Okay.
But what Windolph does give us
Yeah.
is a look into the minds of the soldiers fighting alongside Custer.
Right.
The fear, the uncertainty, the chaos of that day.
Yeah.
And while the details of Custer's final moments might always be a mystery,
Right.
Windolph's story adds this layer of human experience
That human element.
to this event.
Yeah.
Now, after arriving at Reno Hill,
Okay.
Benteen's battalion, along with what's left of Reno's command,
Right.
they find themselves under siege,
Oh, no.
surrounded
By a huge force.
Imagine that feeling.
Trapped outnumbers.
The enemy closing in. And the siege wasn't over quickly.
How long?
It lasted for over 24 hours.
Wow.
They were under constant attack. Their supplies were running out.
Oh, man.
Windolph really describes those conditions well.
Yeah.
The bravery, the resilience they showed against these impossible odds.
It's amazing they survived.
He talks about Captain Benteen,
Yeah.
his leadership,
His crew head,
the decisions he made during the siege.
which probably saved him.
Yeah. It's incredible they managed to hold out that long.
Yeah, it really is.
Under that kind of pressure.
Yeah.
And we should mention that Windolph himself was recognized for his bravery during the siege.
Really?
He got a battlefield promotion
To what?
to sergeant.
Wow.
So that says something.
Yeah. About his courage.
And the respect he earned from his fellow soldiers.
In those extreme circumstances.
Yeah.
Wow.
His account of the siege really shows you the brutal realities of frontier warfare.
Yeah.
It's a stark reminder of the human cost of these conflicts.
Right. It forces us to confront the reality
Yeah.
of what these soldiers faced.
Both on the side of the U.S. Army and the Native American tribes.
It's a powerful reminder that history isn't just about dates and names.
It's about the stories
The individual stories.
of those who lived through these times.
Right. And Windolph's memoir gives us a powerful way to understand the Battle of Little Bighorn.
And its impact on the people who were there
Yeah.
really makes you think, huh,
It does.
that someone could go through something like that.
Yeah. And then years later,
Decades later.
tell their story.
It's amazing.
It really is a window into
It's
this
a pivotal moment.
in American history.
Yeah,
And it's not just about the battles and the strategy.
right. It's about the people.
It's about the human cost,
The fear,
the camaraderie.
loss, the profound sense of loss.
It reminds us that every historical event
Yeah.
has these individual stories.
Of courage, resilience, and sacrifice.
And we can't forget that.
We can't.
Those firsthand accounts are so important.
For invaluable.
They give us
Well,
that,
context.
the emotion
to detail.
that you don't get from the official records.
Exactly.
And Windolph doesn't hold back.
He does.
He shares his opinions
About.
about the choices made by the commanders.
Interesting.
He's not afraid to critique.
So his memoir is really infused with his own personal experiences
It is.
and reflections.
Which makes it
So compelling.
so interesting to read.
It really is.
But it's important to remember he wrote this years later, right? Decades later.
Memories.
Could have been influenced by time,
Yeah, by other accounts, by how people were interpreting the battle.
right? The changing interpretations over time.
Which is why it's so important to look at everything.
All the different perspectives.
All the different
To
perspectives.
compare the different accounts.
To really dig into the historical analysis.
And separate fact from fiction.
And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting.
It does.
We're not just taking Windolph's word for it.
Right, yeah.
We're looking at his story.
Along with all the other stuff.
Every other historical records.
Analyzing the
The
decisions.
tactical decisions.
Exploring the mysteries.
And the mysteries that still surround Little Bighorn.
It's like piecing together a puzzle.
It really is.
Using all the evidence we have.
Trying to get that clearer picture.
Of what really happened.
So why does all of this matter?
Yeah.
Why should you care about Windolph's story?
Why Little Bighorn?
It's about so much more than just one battle.
It's about the clash of cultures.
The complexities of westward expansion.
The consequences of conflict.
Devastating consequences of conflict.
Yeah.
Makes us think critically
About
about the historical narratives,
to question assumptions.
to recognize that there are always different sides to every story
Different perspectives.
that shape how we understand the past.
Right.
Windolph's account.
With all that emotion.
All those insights.
It's a powerful reminder that history is not just dates and names.
It's a tapestry
Like-
from the experiences,
Of individuals.
each with their own story to tell.
What a journey.
What a journey.
From scouting missions,
Through frantic messages.
we've seen the Battle of Little Bighorn.
Through Windolph's eyes.
And with the historical analysis, we've seen the chaos
Your courage.
and the enduring mystery of Custer's last stand.
So what stays with you?
Yeah.
The cries for reinforcements.
The bravery.
The unanswered questions.
About Custer's final moments.
We've just scratched the surface.
We have.
There's so much more out there.
Waiting to be discovered.
So keep digging.